Good evening, everyone. It's 11:15 on Tuesday. My name is John Cifelli, and this is WeatherNJ with a video update. We haven't done one of these in a while, but we have a very interesting storm to talk about, a very complex situation, and it is, of course, leading to a very complex forecast, but aren't they all? Here's the satellite across the country, and it's really a beautiful, well-developed storm with a moisture plume that stretches from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to the Hudson Bay. There's a very nice, well-defined, developed low-pressure center, surface low-pressure center that's now moving across the northeast Ohio Valley. And now we're starting to see the development of a secondary coastal low-pressure system. And that, of course, is what is going to bring us our weather over the next couple of days. And I do say couple of days, meaning just that, the next couple of days, as there's some changes in the forecast that suggest we might see some light rain and snow lingering into Thursday and maybe even to Thursday night. I don't think we'll see anything accumulating, but definitely something that will bear some watching and definitely make for a cool and kind of dreary couple of days, even once our rain and snow storm system moves out and finally away from us here in New Jersey. Here's the radar across the upper mid-Atlantic, and the rain is beginning to approach the Delmarva, and there is rain and snow blossoming across Virginia and certainly up into the higher elevations of Virginia and into eastern West Virginia is where we're seeing snow right now. This storm will have elevation will play a large impact on whether you're seeing rain or snow. Some of the higher elevations of the Philadelphia suburbs and certainly into northwestern New Jersey will be snowier than some of their counterparts down southeast on the coastal plain, as the warm layer is definitely going to be in the very lower layers of the atmosphere. I'll show you that in the forecast soundings in just a little bit. The low pressure currently, as I said, northern Ohio Valley is where the surface primary is, just east of the triple point of West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. And now we're starting to see a lobing of a secondary development, and it's moving across the coastal plain, across the foothills of North Carolina, and this is where we'll start to see the generation, the cyclogenesis of our coastal low across the Virginia Capes and the heading towards the southeastern Delmarva Peninsula. Back home in New Jersey, as of 11 o'clock, the temperatures are down into the upper 20s in some place out in the Pine Barrens. Interestingly, it looks like some parts of South Jersey are actually colder than some parts of North Jersey. And besides the possibility of an urban heat island effect up around New York City, I think that that's obviously an impact of the relative humidity being higher in South Jersey. So as the air mass saturates in the lower part of the state before the northern half of the state, we're approaching the wet bulb temperature, which is the temperature that you're going to have when your air mass is saturated, or at the very least when you're able to support rain or snow at the surface. So with higher humidity and temperatures closer to the dew points in South Jersey, the temperatures are cooling off much quicker. And as we saturate in the northern half of the state, we'll see these temperatures up here start to fall as well. So when does the precipitation start? First of two very important questions. This is the 0Z NAM, the North American model, and 0Z corresponds with 7 o'clock p.m. every night until daylight savings time. And 6 hours later is 1 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, we see that we have had precipitation fall into southern Maryland and just starting to reach into Delaware. By 4 o'clock in the morning, that has started to spread into Cape May County and Gloucester County. By 7 o'clock in the morning, all the way up to 195 is experiencing some precipitation, whether it be rain or snow. It's probably going to be rain for these locations. As I said, anyone at a lower elevation and certainly in the lower half of the state is going to have liquid issues for quite some time before we see any changeover. By 10 o'clock in the morning, we have accumulating precipitation to the Route 1 corridor, and by 1 o'clock in the afternoon statewide, we have rain falling, or in northern New Jersey, snow falling. So start time sometime between 7 o'clock and 1 o'clock statewide is a pretty safe bet, and the radar confirms this. Again, we saw that it's already making its way towards Delaware. So, the second important question, rain or snow, when will it change? A large part of that is going to be a function of where the heavier banding sets up. I mentioned in yesterday's text forecast that when you have heavier banding, the snow that will be forming aloft, it will be very cold aloft for the duration of the storm, and we will have snowflakes and snow crystals forming in the higher levels of the atmosphere, and as they fall, they'll drift down into the warmer layers just above the surface of the Earth and just above where we are and where the sensible weather occurs. If you have heavier banding and higher vertical velocities, then you'll get stronger lift and you'll get heavier snowfall. And if you have heavier snowfall, it can sometimes overwhelm that shallow layer of warm air near the surface. When I say vertical velocities, I'm talking about how quickly the air is hoisted up vertically into the atmosphere. These are the 700 millibar vertical velocities, and the North American model at 30 hours from the 18Z hour. This is the model run that started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday. So 30 hours later, we're now talking about 7 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday. The NAM puts the stronger vertical velocities just off the coast of Sandy Hook and Toms River, reaching back towards Gloucester and Camden counties into South Jersey. The GFS, by comparison, holds those stronger vertical velocities off the coast. So taken verbatim, the North American model would argue for a quicker transition to snow. The GFS would say, no, we're going to hold things off until perhaps after the rush hour. The forecast sounding shows us where that warm layer of air is. This line right here on the slant is the freezing line. This is 32 degrees freezing, and this axis is vertical up into the atmosphere, so we're talking up over your head if you just basically drew a straight line up. And these are the different temperatures: 10 degrees Celsius, negative 10 degrees Celsius, 0 degrees Celsius. So this is the freezing line, and everything off to the left of this line is all frozen. This is cold and cold enough to support snow all the way up through the entire vertical column until you get to this point right here. Dragging this across, this corresponds with about 975, 950 millibars. So you're talking a few hundred feet above your head where you have air that's warm enough to melt snow that falls throughout the column above you. Again, if you have heavy snowfall rates, you can overcome this and you can get snow down at the surface. Whether or not it accumulates is an entirely different story. This, by the way, is just northeast of Philadelphia. So we're talking for one specific point location across the area that I forecast for. The red line is the surface temperature, the green line is the dew point. So the red line shows us that we have a temperature of about +4, +5 degrees Celsius. We're looking at 38, 39 degrees at 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. So precipitation has just started, and it's starting as rain in Philadelphia. Moving a little further up, north and east, this is now in Edison. +3, +4, but pretty much the same situation. Frozen, cold enough to support frozen precipitation in the entire vertical column until you get to about 975, 950 millibars. So just a few hundred feet above you, everything's cold enough for snow. But where we are down at the surface, it is not. So it will take heavier precipitation. So if that banding on the North American model makes its way into New Jersey earlier than the GFS forecasts, then we can see some snow mixing in away from the higher elevations. Moving out in time, we're back in Philadelphia. This is 30 hours out from 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, so we're now at 7 o'clock Wednesday night, just after rush hour. We're down to +2, +3 in Philadelphia, corresponding to about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. And once you get to that point and the sun is down, now we're probably looking at accumulating snow in Philadelphia. Up in Edison, much of the same thing, +1, +2 degrees Celsius, 32, 33, 34 Fahrenheit. So cold enough for snow at this point as well. I think the transition comes right around rush hour along the Route 1 corridor and slightly thereafter. But accumulating snow, I don't think occurs until after everyone's home Wednesday night. Most of the day will be rain if you're south and east of the Route 1 corridor, if you're in Philadelphia, and if you're in New York. Thereafter, what's left and what falls, well, that'll be a function of where the heaviest banding sets up, and that's not something you really can always forecast with a high degree of confidence 24 hours out, but I think that looking at some of the past storms this winter, I think it would make sense if some of the best banding sets up in some of the similar locations that it did in the early February storm. That's why I have my highest snowfall totals in northeast New Jersey, some of those same locations that saw the best banding and the best snowfall rates once the sun set in that early February storm. If I had to change the forecast, and I've kept the same snowfall map, I really don't see much of a need or a reason to change at this point. I'd probably say that if I had to change something, I would maybe truncate the pink and the blue off towards the north and east and extend the gray maybe a little bit into Burlington County and western New Jersey a little bit, where I'm not sure they get the heavier precipitation once it's cold enough to really start accumulating. But I think where we do see those bands set up, I think that 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of snow is certainly a possibility, and I think that the low end of all of these ranges are still a pretty safe bet. So most of the snow will come again after dark on Wednesday, mostly accumulating snow, although you might see some snow in the late afternoon and towards the early part of the evening, but I don't think it really starts to stick and start to pile up until we get towards dark. And then at that point, we see some spokes of energy start to rotate around our low that will basically be trapped and cut off from the flow as it sits just off southeast of Long Island. And we might see some rounds of some drizzle or some snow showers. Nothing will be accumulating, but it'll be a pretty dreary Thursday, and maybe even cloudy to start the day on Friday as well. By the way, don't forget, if you're along the coast, really that's the biggest threat in this whole storm, and there are voluntary evacuations for much of the New Jersey coastline. So definitely, if you have a shore property, you might want to brush down there and batten down the hatches a little bit. And regardless of where you are tomorrow, be safe, enjoy, and if I don't see you for another storm for quite some time, as always, warm regards.